Let's get some more reaction to these figures from the Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Alan Mendoza. Alan, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Your reaction to these staggering figures?
Well, I think the word staggering is my reaction to it. I'm staggered by firstly, of course, the way that the figures have been revised up so dramatically. That is a very, very big jump compared to what we were expecting. And secondly, that they, of course, remain high to date. And we're being told those figures also might they might go down, of course, but they also might go up since they're not in a position to accurately reflect them. What is clear in both cases is that we've been focusing a lot on illegal migration in recent months and years. It turns out the level of legal migration is also a clear cause for concern.
How concerned are you about the impact of such large numbers on social cohesion and integration? We often talk about immigration in economic terms, but what about societal cost?
Well, I think there's a very valid point to raise. If you're bringing in this number of people a year, and let's not forget that when we're talking about net migration figures, we actually are talking about a much larger immigration figure of over 1 million people in a country of, 65 million people. That's a significant chunk being added to our country every year. You have to have an integration strategy of how you deal with that large number of people, how you bed them into the communities they're settling down in, whether they're here temporarily or more permanently, and how you sort of essentially ensure that we get on well together. Now, I see no evidence of such an integration strategy appearing or having been put in place in recent years, and that makes me worry that in future we are going to face more strains as different people come here with different views.
Dr. Mendoza, we have had hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians come to this country. We've had over 100,000, perhaps almost 200,000 Hong Kongers. I don't think we've had a single report about how these groups of people have gone into ghettoised communities or have failed to integrate. Do you think that some groups have found it easier to integrate into Britain than others?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment to make, and I think you've...
Oh, no. I was really looking forward to hearing what Alan had to say.
Oh, there he is. He's back. He's back. Alan, sorry, we cut you off in your prime there.
Mystified. I was just about to say that, look, what you've got there are two groups of people. Ukrainians, at the end of the day, are, from a European society, there's a sort of a commonality. If you go to Ukraine, it's not radically different from the UK. You can understand why there's easy integration there. Hong Kong has had a long history here with Britain in terms of its connectivity, and again, you can see and understand why there might be an easier integration path there. I think, though, it's fascinating to see that almost 1 million of the arrivals came from outside the European Union in the last year. Large numbers of those will not be Ukrainians and Hong Kongers. And the question has to be asked, are we confident that people with not necessarily historical link to the UK or sort of common culture to the UK, are they going to find it as easy to integrate without help from the government as those who do have those connections?
Although, I don't know, Dr. Mendoza, I would have thought that someone who comes from a country like India, which has had a long history with the United Kingdom, might find it easier to integrate than someone from an Eastern European country that hasn't had a historical connection to the United Kingdom.
But you've got to remember the nature of the historical connection. I think I was in India fairly recently, and I wanted to ask about the historical connection to everyone I was speaking to. And what was fascinating was that most people obviously have very mixed views about their British experience, given it was a colonial experience as opposed to a shared civilizational experience, as you might have found with Europeans in that sort of way. And I think, there is an element, therefore, of understanding different histories and different people's experience of Britishness to sort of perceive how they might react to being in the UK. Not to stress for one moment that Indian migrants will not be able to integrate here. We've seen many examples, and I think you can see a very obvious one at the head of the country from family histories.
Yes, of course, but there may well be some historic grievances depending on who you're talking to. Just very lastly, the political reaction in your position at the Henry Jackson Society. You will speak to a lot of Conservative MPs. They are so frustrated at these numbers. Why is the government not doing anything about it?
Well, you may be surprised to hear I also speak to a lot of Labour MPs, and everyone's rather bemused by the figures. To be fair, you're not finding anyone, clapping and applauding the sort of the numbers as being something that that is sensible. I think MPs on all sides really want an honest debate about this. I think you mentioned earlier there's economic reasons for it. Fine, let's put them out on the table. Let's explain the social costs. Let's explain the infrastructure costs, and let's have a proper debate about it, which is something I don't think we've had in this country. And
well, Dr. Alan Mendoza, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for your perspective there. We really appreciate it. And I suppose one of the benefits of having control over our migration system is we do get to have these debates now.